There is a specific kind of heartbeat in a nation just before the social contract finally snaps. It's the sound of 590 unregulated arrivals hitting the coast at the exact same moment that a 100-year-old family farm is liquidated by a new 19% inheritance tax. Last night, that heartbeat became a thunderclap. 138 arrests, 87 injured, and 4 major city blocks paralyzed as physical discord surged through the heart of the UK. From the breached cordons of London to the explosive standoffs in Manchester, the official narrative has officially collapsed. While the leadership in Whitehall dismisses the crowds as criminals, the streets are delivering a verdict on a system that burns £6 million a day on hotel capacity, while its own pensioners choose between heating and eating. Today, we are performing a sovereign autopsy on a nation in freefall.
The most hideous shift in British strategy has moved from the hotels to the hallowed grounds of our military. Historical bases, once home to the nation's elite fighting forces, are being permanently requisitioned to house 1.4 million anticipated arrivals. It is a deeply symbolic transfer of sovereign assets that critics have labeled a surrender without a shot. The fact in this narrative is the double standard. While the Ministry of Defense authorizes the transfer of SAS bases, British veterans are sleeping rough on the very pavements they once swore to protect. The public sees the sovereign insult clearly. The state will audit your bank account and seize your family land, but it will accommodate the world without a single passport check.
To understand the arithmetic of anger, you have to look at the £22 billion black hole used to justify cutting winter fuel payments for 10 million pensioners. While the Treasury claims the cupboard is bare for those who built this country, it magically finds budget surpluses to provide 3-course meals and climate-controlled suites for undocumented arrivals. This isn't fiscal responsibility. It is a calculated liquidation of the working class. Every pound squeezed from the British farmer flows directly into the £6 million a day hotel bills. The strategy appears to be a strategic electorate expansion, dismantling the rural economy to make room for a new, dependent population that will never bite the hand that feeds them.
While the authorities focus on crushing dissent, the statistics reveal a country that has become the machete capital of the West. With a new attack reported every 6 minutes and 200,000 sexual assaults annually, the risk of a life-ending confrontation has become the new normal. But here is the painful truth. The state has criminalized your survival instinct. A woman faces a prison sentence for carrying a simple canister of pepper spray, while masked gangs operate with near total impunity. This state-enforced helplessness is the warning currently echoing in Washington. When the police solve just 2% of robberies, the public realizes that the prosecutor in number 10 isn't smashing the gangs, he's managing the retreat.
A nation doesn't collapse through external war, it collapses through internal surrender. The fires in Manchester and the breached cordons in London are merely the symptoms of a leadership that has traded its own people for a globalist reset. The government can monitor your tweets, they can label the outrage as far right, and they can even raid a patriot's farm with armed units, but they cannot hide the receipts of a broken system. The curiosity of the viewer shouldn't be about whether the riots will end, but whether there is anything left of the old Britain to save. The last orders for the social contract have been called. The standoff has begun.
107 police officers injured, homes smashed open, cars burned in residential streets, a leisure centre reduced to a mangled, smoking skeleton, migrant families fleeing their neighbourhoods in the dead of night. These are not images from faraway conflicts. These are scenes from towns across Ireland and the UK, where anti-immigration unrest has erupted with a scale and ferocity few anticipated. The damage is staggering, not only because of its size, but because of what it signals: a breakdown of trust, an atmosphere thick with fear, and a public mood turning sharper by the hour. And the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes that these events are not isolated sparks. They are flare-ups of the same pressure building across two nations, pressure that no government has yet managed to release. In Ballymena, tension burst without warning. Streets that had been quiet days earlier were suddenly filled with the crackling roar of fireworks being fired horizontally into police shields. Bricks and bottles followed. Officers pushed forward, fell back, regrouped, and were struck again. For 3 consecutive nights, the clashes grew more severe, the explosions brighter, the crowd more determined. When daylight returned, the cost was brutally evident. Dozens of officers were hurt, families found their windows smashed, and cars stood gutted on driveways. Migrant communities pasted makeshift notices to their doors, insisting their houses were British households, hoping it might be enough to stop someone from shattering the next pane of glass. But fear spread faster than reassurance could. Entire streets saw families of Romanian, Bulgarian, and Filipino origin packing their belongings into their cars, leaving the homes they had lived in for years. In one neighbourhood, nearly 2/3 of a Roma community left altogether, too frightened to stay another night. The violence then struck Larne. A leisure centre temporarily housing displaced migrants was forced open by masked men and set alight. Flames tore through the roof. Fire crews battled to contain the blaze, as police confirmed it was a deliberate attack. Officers brought in reinforcement units, including water cannons, to regain control of the surrounding streets. The sense of instability did not fade with the smoke. It settled in, heavy and unmistakable, a belief that something fundamental had shifted.
Dublin, throwing bottles and launching fireworks at authorities during an anti-immigration protest sparked by allegations of an attack on a young girl.
Across Ireland, anger was erupting in multiple places at once. These clashes were not spreading from town to town like contagion. They were surfacing independently, each driven by its own mixture of frustration, fear, and political disillusionment. And in Dublin, the tension snapped into full view. More than 1,000 protesters surged through southwest Dublin after news broke that an asylum seeker had been charged with the alleged assault of a 10-year-old girl. The crowd pushed forward with a force that overwhelmed officers. A Garda vehicle was set ablaze. A helicopter circling overhead was hit repeatedly by laser beams. Officers were struck by fireworks fired like munitions. Inside the hotel housing asylum seekers, families pressed themselves against interior walls as the sounds of glass, explosions, and shouting filled the air. But what's most alarming is not just the violence itself, but the pattern it fits into. Across the UK the previous year, more than 30 towns had already faced their own anti-immigration demonstrations, some spiralling into nights of open disorder. Hotels became flashpoints, streets filled with confrontations. Councils spent millions trying to stabilise communities, often with only partial success. Put together, these events reveal a continent-wide unease, where social tension no longer waits for a single trigger. It erupts wherever the pressure is highest. Inside Downing Street, these scenes have landed with the weight of a political crisis. Keir Starmer, already under pressure to bring immigration under firmer control, now faces a reality where unrest is unfolding faster than policy. His Home Secretary has pushed to accelerate deportations, tighten asylum rules, and reduce visa pathways for workers and families, arguing that public confidence can only be rebuilt through decisive action. Yet these measures have not calmed the streets. Instead, the government finds itself caught between two forces moving simultaneously. One side accuses Starmer of being too slow, too cautious, too unwilling to confront what they see as a national emergency. The other argues the government is abandoning humanitarian responsibilities and fueling fear with rhetoric that emboldens extremists. This divide has created a political grey zone, one where neither side feels listened to, and both feel increasingly angry. Online networks magnify that anger relentlessly. Videos of clashes in Ballymena, fires in Larne, and confrontations in Dublin are being clipped, shared, distorted, and weaponised. Narratives form instantly. Some are false, others exaggerated, but all of them spread faster than official statements can correct. And as those narratives grow, they build a sense that the authorities are no longer in control. For Starmer, this is the nightmare scenario. A security challenge that morphs into a political one, then feeds back into the streets, creating a cycle neither legislation nor press conferences can easily break. Across both islands, police forces are reviewing their plans, strengthening patrols, and preparing for more unrest. Community leaders are meeting behind closed doors, trying to calm residents who are terrified of further reprisals. Councils are assessing damage to homes, shops, and public buildings, unsure how they will fund the repairs. Migrant families continue to leave neighbourhoods where they believed they were safe. In every conversation, from police stations to parliament, the same fear echoes: the next eruption may not wait for weeks or months. It could happen tomorrow, triggered by a rumour, an allegation, a video, even a misunderstanding. And when you consider the scale of the destruction already seen, burned buildings, displaced families, entire communities emptied, and more than 100 officers injured, the stakes become painfully clear. If this is what a single wave of anger looks like, what happens when the next one hits? And will the UK or Ireland be ready when it does?
There is a specific kind of silence that precedes a national storm, the kind where the government hopes you aren't looking at what's happening to the foundations of the country. But that silence was shattered last night. From the hallowed grounds of SAS training bases to the streets of 5 major UK cities, a total collapse of cohesion has officially begun. While British pensioners wrap themselves in blankets, choosing between a radiator and a meal after losing their fuel payments, the state is requisitioning sovereign military soil to house 10,000 unvetted arrivals at a cost of £8 million a day. This isn't just a logistics problem, it is a visible fracture in the social contract. Today we are witnessing an internal surrender of a nation. Is Keir Starmer restoring stability, or is he presiding over a society in freefall? The decision to transform elite military barracks into dormitories for unknown men from across the globe has triggered a 67% collapse in public trust. These bases once honed the skills of the SAS. Today they are symbols of tactical abandonment. Across the British countryside, tactical police units are retreating from community tensions, a new code phrase for the chaos exploding as 1.2 million individuals bypass every legal check in the book. The betrayal is both financial and symbolic. When a government prioritizes the comfort of those who breached its borders over the warmth of the grandmothers who built the country, it doesn't build a fairer Britain, it engineers a national insult. While the authorities focus on crushing thuggery, the streets have earned a terrifying new reputation as the machete capital of the West. With over 50,000 sharp instrument offences in a single year, the public is reeling from a surge in violence that the police admit they can no longer control. But here is the nail in the story, the paradox of defence. In Starmer's Britain, a young woman is legally prohibited from carrying even a non-lethal canister of pepper spray for her own protection. If she carries mace, she is a criminal. If she is attacked by a gang with a zombie knife, she is a statistic. This state-enforced helplessness has created a vacuum where the law-abiding are disarmed by statute, while the lawless roam with near-total impunity. Why does the Prince of Human Rights refuse to act? Critics point to a legal framework that has become a blueprint for capitulation. We are seeing an industrial-scale deception where thousands of arrivals suddenly claim miraculous religious conversions or identity shifts the moment a deportation flight is mentioned. Because Starmer remains ideologically tethered to the European Court of Human Rights, Britain remains the soft touch of the continent. Foreign judges in Strasbourg now have the final say on who walks the streets of Leeds and Liverpool, turning the UK into what Nigel Farage calls a vassal state of international bureaucracy. A nation doesn't collapse through external war. It collapses through internal surrender.
The riots, the machete attacks, and the requisitions barracks are merely the symptoms of a leadership that has traded sovereignty for operational necessity. The government can monitor the situation, and they can label the dissent as far right, but they cannot hide the receipts of a broken system. The curiosity of the viewer shouldn't be about whether the chaos will end, but whether there is anything left of the old Britain to save. The invisible eye of the public is open. The question is, will the state listen before the new normal becomes a permanent funeral for the British way of life?